So why are you really here? And what are you creating? I'm Ryan Lilly, and for the last decade, I've helped people to overcome their fears, to pursue their passions, to reconnect with their innate creativity, and to become successful entrepreneurs. I'm a huge fan of personal development and have studied under people like Tony Robbins, Jack Canfield, and Gary Vee, to name just a few. But now I'm taking the leap myself. I'm crossing the coals, and I'm finding out what it means to live life on purpose. Let's turn your fears into a new purpose. This is the Fear into Purpose podcast.
All right, we're recording. So I want to welcome everyone to my new podcast, Fear into Purpose. And this is really a podcast where we're going to talk to inspirational people who have overcome certain fears in their lives to pursue their purpose every day. And I think you'll find if you listen to their stories and apply those things and really take action, those things are possible for you as well. Today, I have a very special guest joining me all the way from Manchester, England. He's a few time zones ahead of me, my good friend, Ben Allsop. Now, I want to mention to you how I met Ben. It's kind of a cool story. There's a Netflix documentary called I Am Not Your Guru. And it sort of shows a Tony Robbins event that he does once a year in the United States called Date with Destiny. And this is a sort of higher level Tony Robbins event. It's by no means like an entry level event. It's 6 days long and very, very in depth. And you really, I think, take a hard look at yourself and your values and your beliefs in the process. And so the event that Ben and I were at wasn't the exact one in that documentary in terms of date and time, but it was that event, that workshop. I think it was a year or two after the documentary aired. And we were actually in the same room, in the same hotel that was filmed in, which was pretty cool. But in this event, as you would see in the documentary, you're divided into teams and you also work with a partner. And I had the honor of working with Ben. I had a couple of partners in the event that one of them had to leave because of a family emergency. And then another one had a different concern come up. And so I was really grateful to have Ben about halfway through become my partner. And this isn't a seminar where, you know, you're partnered with somebody and you just kind of compare notes and, oh, what did you get for this one? And what did you get for that one? It's a very, Ben and I were just talking beforehand, it's a very intense, emotional connection that you make as a part of this. So Ben is a speaker, he's a coach, he's an entrepreneur, he's really a visionary. He's the founder of something called the Shape Your Destiny community, which I would encourage you to check out on Facebook. Just type in Shape Your Destiny. Their mission is to share inspirational content, create positive energy and ideas for the world. And I certainly get that every day when I, open Facebook and take a look and see Ben, and he's got his dog Marcel on there. Most days, it's my favorite thing to see first thing in the morning. So Ben, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. I am so deeply grateful and honored that you're here today, sir.
Thank you so much for such a beautiful intro, Ryan. Your words, they really move me. I feel very humbled to be here. I'm honored to be on your podcast. It's an absolute privilege to be here and have this conversation. Just speaking to you after all this time and after recalling the journey just before we started the recording, we had a quick conversation. You said to me at the beginning of this process of us joining here on this podcast, do you remember me? And I was like, sure, man. How can I forget? As you mentioned, it's such a visceral, intense experience at any of Tony's events, but particularly at Date with Destiny, because it is the event that's designed to really move people and shift people into their power. To be in partnership with you on that and to be here on the podcast with you now, it's such a beautiful process and kind of marker of the progress that we've all made in that time. I think it was around 4 years ago. And 4 years ago have flown by. They've gone by in a blink of an eye. And, as I'm sat here with you, what's really moving through me now, the thought that's come up is that there are no mistakes, that we know that life is always working in our favor. And, we don't really know the impact that we make on people until later on. And this is what I've come to learn over this process, sitting here with you now, Ryan. and using the technology that we have. You're in Ocala, right? Which is whereabouts in the States? What state is it in? I'm not familiar with the geography.
It's in north central Florida. We're about an hour north of Orlando.
So, and I'm in Manchester, and I don't know what the distance is between us, but we sit here and it's like, wow, I feel you, brother. Thank you so much for having me here, my man.
Well, thank you for being here. And I wanted to jump right into the first question. I know there are several really incredible parts to your story, and that's one of the reasons I remembered you after 4 years was in that event, kind of learning your story. And for me, one of the most interesting parts was, I think when you were in your 20s, you had achieved a great deal of business and financial success. For someone in their 20s, you had done quite well. And then you had something happen sort of after that. So if maybe we could start there and tell us, what success you achieved.
Sure, man. I'd love to share that with you and the audience that are listening. Like most people, I was brought up with the idea that success was something that we achieve, that going out into the world and creating something and having the money, having the materials, having the image, the way that other people look at us, that was something that I really believed in. I'd been taught that was the way. I watch films, I watch movies, I'd look on MTV. There's now social media, of course, and Instagram. As I was growing up, that wasn't the case. Instagram came a little bit after my teenage years, but still, it was very much an influence around what achievement and success meant to a person. And a lot of people around me were, they had faith in me. My parents had faith in me. I was with a beautiful lady at the time who I'd been working, and she'd seen potential in me, and she'd said, listen, I believe in you. You've got potential. I was like, at the time, I didn't believe in myself so much. I remember embarking on that journey and really making financial success my obsession. I was so intent on being that person that had the financial wealth. He had the business, he had the finances, he had the materials, and he had the image to convey to people. And I lived off that. I thrived off it. I was in my element at one point. As you say, I'd had significant financial success. But what's really interesting about this is that all my financial success didn't come at once. So at the beginning, it was really difficult. It was really hard work to get the business off the ground. And for the first 6 months, I was, so passionate. I had this reason. I was like, look, I want to create the money so that I can provide, I can build, I can be a force for good in the world. Obviously, I wasn't quite using that language at the time. But what I was doing was I was living from a purpose. And I did really well at the beginning after the first 6 months. It was something that I specialize in. I love connecting with people. I love conversations. And, sales is a big part of conversations are a big part of sales. So I excelled in it. And I remember there was one particular day, and I'd been going through some challenges at that time. I got to a point where I was about 4 years into my business career with my company. I had about 25 staff. The company was doing really well. I remember being sat there one day in the morning. I'd woken up overnight. I'd opened up the newspaper, and there'd been an incident on the other side of the world. Now, in the industry that I was in, it was a commodity-based industry. So the old rules of supply and demand go for that. It was like, customers want to buy. If there's more supply, the price is lower. If there's less supply, the price is higher. Just the standard rules of supply and demand. And on this particular day, this flood had occurred in Thailand, where most of the factories that built the components for the stuff that we were selling semiconductors, hard drives, storage. There's this flood that had occurred. And this flood had meant that the entire factory that had built these components had closed down. But not just that entire factory, the entire global infrastructure had been affected by this flood because this one particular component wasn't available anymore. And I'm sat there, I opened the newspaper and I almost fell out of my chair because this flood meant that there was going to be a global shortage of this product for the next 3 months. And of course, I had it in my mind. I've been saying since day one of this journey of being in business, I'm going to be a millionaire. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to have infinite amounts of money in my bank. I'm going to be that person that people respect. I'm going to have the nice cars. And I'm sat there this day, and I literally read this article. I picked up the phone to a customer, and the customer said, "Hey, have you got any of this stock?" I'm like, "No." Knowing full well that I had the majority of the European stock in my warehouse. You know, I'm thinking to myself, supply and demand, let's have a conversation about this. And it started from there because the customers started ringing me all morning. They're like, "Have you got any more of this stock? Have you got any more of this stock?" I'm like, "What's going on here?" And it turned out that the price on the stock increased by 300% over the space of 4 days. So we had all of this stock in the warehouse, and I'm sat there, I've got my customers, I'm looking at the warehouse, I'm like, wow, I've really been blessed here. God's blessed me with this opportunity to be the person that I want to be and have the wealth and the materials that I want to have and create this image. I literally made £500,000 in 7 days. And it was such a profound shift for me, because if you realize how important that was to me at the time, how important it was to have that money and how important it was to have that status, that was the moment that changed it all for me. I'm sat there literally one day, I'm running a company, I've got, you know, a significant amount of money in the bank, but I'm nowhere near the target of being a millionaire that I wanted to be by the age of 30. And then this situation has occurred, and it was literally like this anomaly situation. You know, we have them, we know them, we see them well. I was actually in it, and I was benefiting from that situation. And it shifted my reality so quickly. I went from wanting to be that person to being that person in the blink of an eye. I mean, there were so many things that occurred after that. But just from the audience's point of view, sharing that, because I'm sure that there's plenty of people out there that go through this process of really defining what success means to them. Would you agree, Ryan?
I would agree. Yeah, it's a process that takes some time to really, you know, on a personal level, to find what success is.
Totally. Yeah. And, you know, we all grow up with different ideas around that. And what I now know after being at the event with you and Tony Robbins is that our ideas around that aren't always the ideas of what it's really like, right? And what it looks like externally isn't always what it looks like internally. For me, that was definitely the case. The fact that my circumstances had moved so quickly, I'd gone from wanting to become that person to actually becoming that person in such a short space of time. Call it a stroke of luck, call it a gift from God, or whatever you want to call it. It was really a profound time for me, because until that point, I guess I didn't really believe it was possible. And then at that moment, when I saw that and that happened, I was like, there's things in this world that cannot be explained. You know, there's miracles that cannot be explained. There's things that happen that come along in our lives. And at the time, we don't know what they're there to teach us. But when we look back, and I love the quote by Steve Jobs, which is, you can't connect the dots looking forwards, but you can always connect them looking backwards. That's true for me as well, because looking back on this now, and looking back on where we're at now with this conversation, there have been no mistakes. Everything that has occurred in this way that has brought us to this conversation. And you know, that was such an awesome time, but also it was a really difficult time for me, because like everything, the story doesn't end there, right? It continues. The story goes on.
So that was going to be my next question. How did you go from that into what you're doing now and finding this purpose?
Well, now depends how long you've got, because that's a long story. But we'll break it down into the small facts. I simply wasn't happy. I wasn't happy with where I was at that time. And no matter how much I tried to cloud that out with material purchases, with fast cars, with going to clubs. You know, when you talk about the Wolf of Wall Street, I've lived that life. You know, when people say to me, "Oh, I just can't believe that," I'm like, believe it. Back then, I was a man that really, really enjoyed the frivolous side of life and really enjoyed that superficial side of life. I thought I enjoyed it. What I was really doing was I was distracting myself from who I really wanted to be, because the reason why I set about on that journey in the first place was because my girlfriend at the time, she had 3 children. You know, I'd always wanted to be a family man. And at the age of 27, when I met her and we started to see each other and we fell in love, you know, this thing of being the provider and being the person that was somebody that she could depend on and being that strong man in the household, and you know, this whole identity of the man that I needed to be that pushed me and gave me the drive to create what I wanted to create, so that I had that resource available to me. I'd come from I wouldn't say a background of poverty, but I surely did come from humble beginnings. I know that there's plenty of people out there in the world that start their life in a much more challenging way than I did. But I would say that where I came from, it gave me a really good base and grounding to see what family values are all about and what love is all about and what compassion and care is all about. So when I found myself in this position where I'd now separated from this woman that I had loved, I'd been in that relationship with her, I'd got this money that had come from nowhere. It just appeared in my life. It was like piles of money that appeared in my life. And I'm looking at my bank. I'm literally going to the bank and I'm looking at the bank and there's 6 figures in my bank account. I'm like, this is real. There is literally 6 figures in my bank account. I can go to the bank at any time and I can buy whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can have whatever I want. I can go out and be whoever I want. I can go and buy the Armani suits. I can walk around in Hugo Boss from head to toe. I can put the Hublot watch on. I've got the Mercedes 600 horse, 500-600 horsepower Mercedes. I've got the 400 horsepower Audi. I've got this like penthouse apartment with marble floors and beautiful walls and, you know, everything that you could possibly imagine that a successful bachelor would have in their life. I've got the women, I've got the clubs, I've got the VIP areas, and I wasn't happy. I was like, wow, I'm here. I'm suffering. I'm really hurting. I'm hurting because the purpose in my life had gone. And the purpose in my life had gone because the purpose was love, it was compassion, it was caring. It was being loving, being compassionate, and being caring. And even though I had all of this money and I had these superficial relationships with women that were coming into my life and I had all of that stuff, none of it could replace that feeling that I took from my purpose, that feeling of self-esteem that I took from being a loving man and a caring man and a compassionate man that put other people very high on his priority list. And I'd made money my idol. I'd made money my priority. I'd made the image that I wanted other people to see me as my priority. And it was at that point where I started to experience severe bouts of depression, pain. You know, I used to look in the mirror and I'd hate the person that I saw in the mirror. I literally look at my face and there were days where I'd start crying because I didn't recognize myself. I didn't recognize who I'd become. I didn't recognize the coldness that was there in my heart. You know, I was heartbroken, but also I had a lot of power. And that power gave me the opportunity to really learn a lot about me and some of the things that I was doing out of hurt and anger at that time. I really wasn't proud of myself about. And, you know, this is where the journey began, Ryan, because it was only at that point where I was like, there must be more to life than this. I literally locked myself away indoors for about 12 months. I was looking in the mirror, I was getting more and more overweight. I wasn't taking care of myself. My health was suffering. People were wondering what was going on. They could see that I was anxious all the time, that I wasn't happy within myself. There was no confidence there. You know, like, this guy, he's got everything, but he is a complete a-hole, you know. What's going on with him? They had drawn this judgment of this harsh, kind of untolerating, unloving character. And that simply wasn't me. So I'm sat there with all of this money, and as I'm pouring it all away, I bump into this woman who amazed me. And that restored my faith a little bit in who I was. I started to have a relationship with this amazing woman, and she was very positive. She was very inspiring. She's herself an amazing person in the world, going out there and putting positivity out. And I was like, I can feel that energy. I can feel that warmth and that love coming from this woman. She's got something special, and I've been missing that. So as I was going through that journey with her, I was still going through the throes of my self-created business challenges. You know, I started to go through liquidation with the business. The business went into challenges. I made some serious mistakes. I'd also been subject to what I class as a life-changing moment, where just like I'd had that moment where I'd woken up and that situation occurred, the money had appeared in my account because of this act of God, if you want to call it that way. I'd also woken up one day and money had disappeared from my bank account because one of my clients had decided to steal from me. And that was really the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because that got me so angry. It really showed me who I was and the pain that I was in, and it exacerbated and magnified the depression that I was going through. It magnified all those toxic emotions that I'd been carrying around with me about things that I'd done in the past and mistakes that I'd made, conversations that I was having with myself where I was beating myself up. And it really stopped me showing up from the person that I truly am. It stopped me showing up because I was sat there always giving myself a hard time, and people around me then went from, oh, he's gone from an arsehole, to we're really worried about whether he's depressed and he's going to take his own life. You know, at 17 years old, I'd had a circumstance in my life where I'd gone through a particularly difficult relationship breakup with a girl that meant the world to me. And my parents had been married for a very long time, so I had a model of the world that in order to be valuable, I'm in a relationship. And at that time, my response to that was to literally go into the medicine cupboard and take a significant overdose. So I'd been there before in the past where I'd been on the brink of taking my own life, and I'd woken up in hospital. I'd woken up with doctors stood over me in a ward of patients who were on heart bypass machines. And the doctor basically came over to me and said, Ben, you're lucky to be alive, son. If you weren't so fit and capable, if you weren't so strong in your heart, you wouldn't be here with us today. So I'd been there, and although people around me were worried about that, there was never a question of that. But what it did do was it impacted everything that was going on in my life, all this anger and all this hurt and frustration. It impacted my relationships, my creativity, my way of being, the person I was showing up in the world at the time. And I was arguing quite a lot with the girl that I was with. There was one particular day where she was in the car, and she was doing everything she could possible to snap me out of it. She could see what I was going through. She was like, snap out of it, I love you. And I couldn't see that she loved me. I couldn't see the patience that she had for me. And she was giving me little notes, and she was dropping little books. She gave me a little book about happiness, like this little pocket book about happiness. And then on this one particular day when we were in a car, we were having this massive argument over everything that had happened 6 months ago that I was still latched onto and holding onto and carrying around with me. She was so frustrated about seeing this shell of a man that she was trying to help me, but I was so ignorant to that. She then decided that it'd be a great idea to put Tony Robbins on in the car. And the person I was at that time, I wasn't available or open-minded to new ideas. I wasn't available to listen or to see the world in a way that gave me that peace or that enthusiasm and energy that I now wake up with every single day. As Tony's talking, I'm like, man, who is this fool? Turn this guy off, you know. He can't tell me how to live my life. I've been through this. I know it all, you know. I'm successful. My ego is still there, right? It's still like running wild, this ego. And we argued about it. And eventually, I saw the error of my ways, and I decided the best thing I could do to make it right with her and to build upon the relationship was to book tickets to go and see Tony in London. At this point, the finances were tight. I had limited money available, and it was a real big decision for me to invest in that and go and sit on the front row. We had to do it in a big way. We had to go and sit on the front row, right? We had to go and be there in front of Tony.
And a front row seat at a Tony event in London is not cheap if you're listening.
I think it's about, you know, it's definitely in the four figures. It's in the thousands, in the high thousands. And we sat there on the front row on that day, and Tony starts talking. And I'm like, man, this guy, I can't believe that I'm here. I'm here with all these crazy people around me. What am I doing here? You know, he starts sharing his story. And he gets to the point in his story where he starts talking about success. He starts talking about what success means and how he sees success. And he comes up with this line which sticks with me, and it'll always stick with me, because this is one of the foundations that I now build my life upon. It's that success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And that's where he got me. He got me with that because I was success, right? I was Mr. Success. I was like, look at me, I'm successful. Even though I'm going through difficulties, I'm still successful. I'm still sat in Tony Robbins with a £20,000 watch on my wrist, like showing it to everybody in the audience so they can see what I'm wearing. And like, I've got one guy who goes, wow, I love your watch. Can I borrow it for the weekend? And, you know, that made me feel really great, because this guy was a financial investor and he was worth so much money. And I'm like, if that guy's asking me, then he must see me as successful. Then Tony gets me with the success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. And I then decided to put my faith in some of the things that Tony was saying, and that we could create and build anything in our lives, that there is no limit to who we can be or what we can create or what we can experience in our lives. And I invested the last of my money on my credit card to go to the event that I then met you at, Ryan. So it was a significant decision. I was like, I need to invest in myself, because this guy's got something. He's got something to share. He's got a message. And it's a message that could impact lives on such a great level. And maybe I can impact lives on such a great level. And at the time, I didn't really know what that meant. I was like, I want to be like Tony. I want to be a coach like Tony. I want to make a difference and be the difference like Tony. I want to be out in the world, and I want to give. I want to share, and I want to potentially help people that have gone through or are going through situations like I had once gone through in the past. You know, I've lived a very colourful life, Ryan. I've had a lot of experiences. You know, the experiences that I've had, like I said earlier, they don't compare to some of the experiences of people that I know around me. But they're still very significant experiences. And what they have given me is a valuable insight, an insight that has enabled me to go from that place of pain, of struggle, of suffering, and really live a life of freedom, live a life of purpose and passion and courage. And that ability to remain calm and peaceful has become such a gift and a blessing to me. And if somebody said to me back then when I was 30 and I was sat there with £1 million in my bank, checking my bank account, and said, would you trade all that money right now for the person that you'll become in 7 years if that meant that you're peaceful, free, happy, living in a sense of self-worth? I probably have said no at the time, because I didn't know what all that meant. But looking back on it now, I think that's the most valuable success that anybody can get to in their life, that success of not really being driven by outside circumstances and having that purpose. And as I mentioned to you, my purpose has always been loving and caring and serving. Even from a very young age, as 5-year-old, I was in that place as well, from my family side of things. And as I've grown up and I've matured and I've seen the world now from a different perspective, that journey there from being 30 to where we're sat right now, it's been profound. And it didn't stop at Tony. Once I'd been through the Tony Robbins programs, I was like, I want to learn more. I want to know about childhood traumas. I want to know about anxiety. I want to know what anxiety is. I want to understand what creates anxiety, because you know there's a lot of people walking around with anxiety in the world. I want to know what happens when people are depressed, why they get depressed, and is there a way that we can shift that without medicine? Because one thing I know about depression is that there's no one on this planet that has ever received, or from what I know, when I ask people, when they've been to the doctors, have you had a test for that chemical imbalance that the doctors tell you is inside your brain when you're sitting there with depression? And quite often they say, no, I've not had a test. I say, so how do you know you're depressed then? You know, and being from that place of sitting there and being in that darkness, I can't describe to you that darkness. I know what that darkness feels like. I know it feels like it will never end. They call it the black dog, don't they, Ryan? I think they call it the black dog. It's something that people live with every single day of their lives. And my purpose became to free people from that.
So
and it all stems back to the experience of now knowing what success really looks and feels like for me.
So Ben, I
Thanks
mentioned
for asking that question, bro.
I mentioned at the beginning, I love following your posts on Facebook in the Shape Your Destiny community. And every morning, one of the posts that I always look for recently is a sunrise. You and your dog, Marcel, are out very early in the morning. I'm a night owl, so I go to bed here in the United States at maybe 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And at that time, you're getting up. And so just before I go to bed, I see the sunrise in England. And you're there with your dog. And the common thread or theme that I notice in a lot of your posts is one that was also, for me, really a common theme at Date with Destiny, and that's gratitude. Can you talk a little bit about gratitude and why it is so important to living a life of purpose?
Firstly, bro, thank you for your kind words and for sharing how the posts in the Shape Your Destiny community inspire you and add value to your life. That really means the world to me. Especially something so simple like a sunrise, right? The picture of the sunrise. I don't recall it in my path of looking for success. Anybody ever decided that they were going to share a sunrise daily? I'm like, waking up every day is success. Waking up every day and being alive and being here on this earth is success to me. And that came from gratitude. That came from first coming across a book in my 20s, actually at the very beginning of my business journey. This is where the personal development journey actually started, where I started to find myself feeding my mind with positive content daily. And I remember I opened up a book called The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace D. Wattles. It's an amazing book. It's very simple. It's so simple, You could give it to a child and they would understand it because the wording is so clear and the concepts and the principles are very much in my language, very direct and to the point. Wallace D. Wattles in that book, very much in alignment with The Secret, because I've also read The Secret, his major principle behind getting rich was gratitude. One of the concepts that stayed with me was that much gathers more and less gathers lost. And where he based that from was the idea that when you're grateful, you have much, you have a lot. When you're grateful, you have everything that you need in your life right now. You're abundant. When you're grateful, you're not worried about what's going to happen because you're here in the present moment and you're living in the present moment. Now, back then, I was like, at the very beginning of that financial business journey, I was so grateful just to have this beautiful woman in my life. I was so grateful to have the opportunity to express myself to the earth and to know that my skills are being validated, that somebody believed in me, because I just didn't believe in myself fully at that time. And the gratitude was natural. I was grateful for everything. remember it. And the gratitude brought more into my life because much gathers more. And as I started to hear Tony talk and go through the process of transforming my life completely on an emotional level, because what I now recognize is the way that I feel is the richness in my life. When I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling peaceful and calm and feeling this purpose and this inspiration, this enthusiasm, that's the greatest gift that I've ever received. I'm so grateful for it. But it's something that's become ingrained in me over time. And I actively and proactively go out every single morning to see that sunshine, because that is my definition of success. That sunrise when I wake up and I walk out the door and I go to the top of the hill. And the locations have changed over the years. It started 5 years ago. I was in my back garden. I'd just go outside. I'd take a picture of the outside of the back garden, adjust the sun in the clouds. And I'd write on Facebook, I am blessed. And I started that process 5 years ago of really recognizing that I am blessed and that we are all blessed. And we're all blessed simply because we're here, we're alive, we're breathing, we've got this beating heart. And that became an everyday thing for me. And people used to comment, but they didn't really know what it was about. And over time, as I said, that evolved, and it went from my back garden to the park. And it went from the park to the next place, which was like a scenery. And then the next thing was like, where can I find the best scenery that is possible? When I moved into my current place of residence, where I'm living now, just outside of Greater Manchester, this was in a time when I'd had all of my properties repossessed. I had a property portfolio that got repossessed. I was financially at the end of it all. Jim Rohn says, you know, have you ever been in a place where you've lost it all? It stings, doesn't it? It stung. It was painful. I felt like I'd lost it all. And I sat here one day. I literally sat here with my father, and I told him that I was going through probably the worst time of my life since I'd been 17. And the very next day, I got up, I went out of the house, and I followed the sunshine. I followed the sun. And the path in front of me was lit up by the sun. And I just started walking because I love nature. Nature is a big part of my life. The connection that comes from nature, the peace and the presence that comes from nature, being around the animals, noticing the abundance, noticing the leaves around us, noticing that there's this ever-present infinity of abundance around us. And I just started walking, following this light. And I remember following this light, and it took me out of where I was in that dark place that I'd shared with my father. And he just brought me to this beautiful field, to this scenery. And I'm walking and I'm following the sunshine. It's like lighting the path in front of me. I'm like, I'm following you. I'm following you. Whatever you're trying to lead me to, I'm following you. And I got to this place. And as you so beautifully mentioned, I share this every day because the scenery there is just so stunning. It really is my definition of much, of richness, of being alive. And I've had to find that within my life. I've had to really look for that in my life. I've had to get past the worries and fears, the idea that I wasn't worth anything, that I wasn't good enough because of the challenges, and break through that fear and step into the person that I am now. Gratitude has been such a big part of that, because when we're grateful, we know that fear can't be there when you're grateful. What are you worried about when you're grateful? You're worried about the future? Be grateful for the moment. You're upset about the past? Be grateful for the moment. You're still here. You're still alive and breathing. Nothing has happened that you can't come back from. There's always possibilities that we can never even see coming. We can't believe these possibilities until they occur. We know that they can occur. We can believe in ourselves that there's so many possibilities. But as I've mentioned to you now, one day I went to sleep and I woke up and there was all of everything that I thought I wanted in my bank account. There is no explanation for this other than that life is working for us, not to us. And it's that joy from the gratitude, that plugging into that joy from the gratitude that has allowed me to now bring that joy to my purpose, has allowed me to bring that energy to the world and that abundance to other people whenever I'm in contact with them and make a meaningful difference upon their lives by inspiring or sharing a story or sharing an insight or a tool or a strategy to shift people from that place of fear and lack and worry and darkness into the place of abundance and certainty and passion and, you know, this feeling that everything is working out and that there's a miracle. And, you know, as I'm talking to you about it now, I'm feeling even more grateful, bro. So, you know, this sunrise thing, for anybody who's listening who doesn't know and follows or wants to follow, joins us in the Shape Your Destiny community and comes into the Shape Your Destiny community. For me, waking up, seeing the sunrise, seeing the sun come up over the horizon, watching the beams of light shine, it's like, what more is there to life than being truly alive?
Ben, it's so beautiful. Again, the whole metaphor of a sunrise and you know, what it represents every day to be grateful. I heard in another podcast you talking about this idea that, you know, sometimes we're only thankful or grateful in life when things happen to us and we get we get money or we get some outward event happens in our environment. But just the idea that you can wake up in the morning and be grateful that you're alive and that the blood is running through your veins and that your heart is beating is something very powerful. I think a lot of people miss. One of my last questions is, obviously you're working now with people and you're coaching and you're speaking to overcome fears in their lives and helping them to pursue their purpose. What do you feel is really, you know, when working with so many people that you have now, have you noticed that there are some common fears that people have, that are holding them back from achieving their purpose?
That's such an amazing question, Ryan. Thank you, brother. Yeah, there is common themes. There's very common themes. There's common patterns. And from working with people from all over the world now, having conversations, powerful conversations on a daily basis, understanding the challenges that each of us face individually and what we face collectively. One of the major beliefs that I come across, and one of the major beliefs that held me back for so many years, is that I am not enough. I am not enough to make a difference. I'm not enough to live the life that I want to live. I'm not enough to be, create, and contribute and experience all the things that I could do. And when I'm not enough, I don't deserve those things. So people settle. They settle, and they settle for things that really don't make them happy. They settle for working for somebody else. You know, that old saying, if you don't have goals, you're going to get used by somebody that does. That's real, and it sounds crass, it sounds direct, but it's true, because I believe that we've all been given a purpose in life. I don't believe that any dream has been given to us for us not to act upon that. The one thing that stops us most is the belief that we can't act upon that. And who am I to act upon that? Who am I to take action upon that? And you hear this every single day. You hear this from people, you know, who have got no certainty in themselves or no belief in their capabilities or their creative genius. We all have a zone of genius, but we've spent so many years being told that we don't. Teachers have told us that we're stupid, perhaps. Not all teachers. I've had some amazing teachers, so I don't want to generalize just teachers. It might be family, it might be friends, it might be other people who've settled for their life, and they say, oh, that's not possible for you. Or, you know, who are you to have these grand ideas of what you want to create? And that really instills this belief of, I am not good enough. I don't deserve the best life. The idea that, you know, on some level, we haven't got the capability to create the life that we want. And it's simply not true. It's a belief, and as we know, beliefs create our reality. Beliefs affect the trajectory of our lives. One of the pieces of work that I do is to help people clear those limiting beliefs. We call them limiting beliefs. One of the pieces of work that I do is to instill that belief in people that you can, with absolute certainty, without a doubt, you can. And if being alive itself, waking up, seeing the sunrise, seeing the beauty of nature around you, noticing those little things like a chance meeting or a conversation at an event 4 years ago that brings people together. If you can't see the miracle in that, then for sure you might not see the miracle that is in you. So the idea is, for me, is to understand that we've been created with a purpose of being bigger than ourselves, being something bigger to others than ourselves, whether that is a love for the person that you're with in a relationship, for your family, for your friends, for contribution to the community, to create something that solves a meaningful problem in the world, that changes people's lives. We've been given a purpose. The one thing that creates most sadness and most pain for people is the idea that they never reach their full potential. And the reason why people feel that way is because they never let themselves know that they are enough. And it was really that for me. It was like this idea of I am not enough, so that means that I'm not worthy and I'm not lovable. And you know, nobody really knows what I'm going through. And it was that silent fear, that fear that stops us from showing up in the world as the best version of ourselves, that fear that stops us from acting on our dreams, that fear that creates the regret later on in life when we get to 80, 75, 80-year-old, and we're sat there on our deathbed. And the greatest fear for so many people in that situation is, what if I could have lived my life differently? I'm blessed, Ryan, to have experienced what I've experienced at such a young age, and to be able to live each day now as if every day is my day. It's my day to do whatever I want to do with it. It's a blank canvas. And I am the artist. And just like Leonardo da Vinci or any of the brilliant artists of this world on any lifetime, that starts with understanding our worth, understanding our capabilities, understanding our power. So when people come to me very often with this belief of I am not enough, we instantly go to work on the idea that that is just BS, that is something you've been taught, that's something that people have shared with you from their own lens of the world, from their own viewpoint. And that doesn't have to be your reality. Now, one of the favorite sayings from Les Brown is that other people's opinions of you do not have to become your reality. Well, everybody's living from other people's opinions. Everybody, or most people, until they go through this process of realizing that they are enough as they are, they're living for the validation of the masses. They're living for the glory and the idea, the significance that other people give them. You only have to look at Instagram today and the way that people show up on Instagram, and some of the behaviors that people do to get attention on Instagram. It's like, wow, does that behavior make you happy? Sure, if it makes you happy, continue doing it. But really, I believe that what we see in the world is a grand manifestation of this idea that has been pressed upon us, that we are not enough. And self-esteem is the starting point for all that. It's something that I've spent the last 7 years working on within myself and growing within myself. But of course, the foundations were there from very young. I had love in my life. I had love in every aspect of my life. And it just took a little bit of time for me to see that. So when I hear this from people, that is the one thing that I say to myself, wow, that is the preventative belief right there that is stopping you from living the most amazing, extraordinary life that you can imagine for yourself, and actually going out and taking action upon that. Because realize this, if you believe that you're not enough, you'll never stand up in front of an audience, or you'll never sit on a podcast, or you'll never share your ideas with the world. So knowing deep down at your very core that whoever you are, wherever you're from, that you are enough, that you are lovable just as you are, that success externally doesn't define you, and it's what occurs on the inside that defines you. And when we realize that the quality of the life that we want is the quality of the emotions that we feel daily, success shifts, and we start showing up in this joyful state. And that's where the magic happens, because when you're in joy, or you're in happiness, or you're in love, what's possible for you when you're in love, when you move into this state of love and appreciation and gratitude? I know that anything is possible. And I don't just say that. I have the evidence to prove it, that anything is possible from a space of love, from a space of caring. And that, for me, going from that space of I'm not enough to knowing that I am enough as I am in this moment, right here, right now, no matter what I create or what I achieve in this lifetime, that's real true fulfillment for me. fulfillment to be proud of the person that we are and the person that we can become, because we all have the potential. We all have that genius that exists within us. And helping people to recognize that is where it's at.
And I know Tony has a saying, he says, all I need is within me now. And to me, that's really the counter to I'm not enough, is you have everything you need inside you. And it's really powerful. Ben, can you talk, just final question, what's the future? What's next for you? What is the Shape Your Destiny community becoming? And again, how can people become a part of it?
It's a great question. I have a broad vision of what I feel it would like to look like. Although I have zero attachments to the outcome, because it's a daily outcome. The daily outcome is that we impact and influence one life every single day. Just one life. One life is enough. And what you shared to me about the sunrise, that really gives me that sense that you never know who you're impacting with just the way of being the person that you are.
On the other side of the world.
Pardon, brother?
On the other side of the world, we don't realize that even geography doesn't matter, that your small thing of posting a sunrise, and I'm over here literally on the other side of the world, and that small thing has made such a huge difference in my life.
Thank you, brother. The way that we live our lives can impact people everywhere just by the person that we are, our way of being. That small conversation, that moment of seeing somebody and giving them the attention they crave in that moment and letting them know that everything's going to be all right, to create a supportive network of people that also live from like-minded values and an approach to life. They come from a place of love and they share with the world from the heart and they inspire. Now, Shape Your Destiny is a place for those people. Shape Your Destiny is a place for all people who believe or are on the journey to believing that there is a better life available for them, that there is something that might be missing. That feeling when we know that something's missing, we all know that, but we deny it. We walk around and we try and fill up the void with things that are meaningless in the grand scheme of things. And this is really about meaning. It's about a life of meaning. It's about creating meaning for other people and creating the opportunity for people to really achieve what they see as impossible. But when you're around people who know that it's possible, it becomes possible, because you don't know what you know until you don't know it, or you know until you know it. You don't know what you know, and there's so much that you don't know. Realizing that the impact of being around positive friends, the impact of sharing your ideas with people that are going to boost you up and support you, the idea of sharing ideas with the world, these are all powerful concepts and they work. To Shape Your Destiny is a melting pot of all that, and it will continue to grow. You know, chance moments that just occur coincidentally. If you know me well, you know that I'm joking and I'm being sarcastic, because that just doesn't happen for me. Things happen, people come into our lives, visions shift. You know, it's like it's got a life of its own, because it's got so many people in there that are doing their own thing. And this space that we're creating, I'm pretty sure that it will grow, it will expand, that more people will come along. I'm sure that there will be people that recognize that maybe they've been living less than their true potential and they've been suffering with that for years and struggling with that for years. I guess we want to create a lighthouse. We want to create a place where people have got a beacon of light, of hope, of an idea that they can be there. And they don't have to be anything more than they are right now, but they can also see that there is much more available to them over time, as you shared so beautifully, Ryan. There's many people message me and they go, that sunrise is beautiful, but I'm sure when people hear this, that they're going to have a deeper understanding of where I'm coming from. And there's things that will happen without a doubt. As I mentioned to you before, sometimes we can't see what's going to happen. We just have to trust it and believe it. You know, there's so many ideas, there's so many invitations for people to be involved, so much magic happening in the world, and very much allowing that process to manifest and unfold in the perfect divine way that it will do, whatever it looks like, is where it's at for me. It's that feeling of This has got a life of its own. Let's allow it. Let's allow it to be what it is. Let's allow ourselves to be who we are. Let's really step into our power. Let's really honor the genius within us. Let's go back to that playfulness, that love, that care, that compassion, that supportive identity that exists within us all when we're children. Let's bring more of that to life and see what magic occurs. And this is the exciting part of the journey for me, Ryan, because it's very much different to the way that I used to live with the Excel spreadsheets. Give me an Excel spreadsheet of the sales figures this month. For sure, I still see that occurring in the future as the business grows, but it's not the primary objective of what I'm doing. The primary objective of what I'm doing isn't selling products and making money. The primary objective of what's being created is to impact lives, one person, one day, one moment at a time. And over the course of time, I'm pretty sure that compounded will be something that I could never dream right now in terms of the way I see it. I see big things for it, but I don't see it how it could be. It probably.
That's so beautiful. Just to let it unfold.
My wildest dreams, brother.
Just to let it unfold and to organically serve its purpose. And again, Ben, such a beautiful story, such powerful lessons for us all to learn from. And again, I want, with everything you do, with every meeting or podcast you listen to or seminar or whatever, I really believe that you shouldn't leave without taking some action. And the action I suggest for people today is to please follow Ben on Facebook. Again, type in the Shape Your Destiny and you'll find the Shape Your Destiny community. Follow him on Instagram as well. And if you're in the UK, and I have some other friends in the UK as well, and maybe you're doing a personal development event or a seminar, please reach out to Ben. I think he's in my mind like the Tony Robbins of the UK and of the world. So just such high respect for you, Ben. And again, thank you so much for taking this time to be on this podcast today. And I want to just tell you how grateful I really am that you are here. So thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you, brother. I feel the love from you. As you're talking, I can feel that warmth, that giving nature, that serving nature. And to be around people like you, Ryan, to be with you, my brother, it's like being at home. So thank you very much for inviting me here and allowing me to share with your audience. I hope that everybody's taken value from this. And as Ryan says, action is the key to attraction. Whatever you want in your life, you've got to act upon it. And remember that no matter what happens in your life, no matter what you've been through, whether people have trampled on you or life has beat you down, you are always enough, and you can always start again and rebuild with that extra passion and purpose. And life can be so much better than it was before. Thank you so much, Ryan. Loving you, my man.
Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you everybody for listening. We'll see you next time.